Let's
you can hear
welcome
us
in
now.
There we go.
our guest,
Dan the man. Let's go.
Dan Savage, Orlando Magic Director of Digital News and writer covering the Magic. Dan, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Yourselves?
We're doing great.
fantastic.
We're excited to be talking about Bol Bol. Listen, I looked on your Twitter. He's on your header. So you clearly have some affinity for Bol Bol. Give us just your Cliff's notes here about Bol Bol.
Well, along with my affinity for Bol Bol, I have affinity for puns, and there's a million of them to go with. Bol Bol, Incredible is among my favorite.
Yes.
Lob, which he'll catch plenty of in Phoenix, is Bol spelled backwards. So, there's a lot to love about Bol just strictly from a fun standpoint. And I think that translates over to the way he plays on the court as well. So much of what we see in NBA games is things that you see on repeat over and over again. It's hard to be surprised at a lot of moments during a regular season, but Bol Bol finds a way to do things you've never seen before from a guy that size, and I think that's what's so intriguing to fans about him.
I was curious about this because I wrote about him over on our website this morning and was digging into a lot of the film with him, and we talked to Kobe Price, who used to write for the Orlando Sentinel at Summer League, and he was saying that he was having a great season, and then he entered health and safety protocols, and it just wasn't quite the same for him coming back. Did you get the sense that kind of changed things for him last season, or was it more so maybe kind of reverting back to what we had seen in Denver before he came to Orlando?
Yeah, I think with Bol, that definitely was a turning point in the course of the season. There are elements of his game that were great from a scoring standpoint. And I think, like any young player, there are areas which he needs to improve. And I think being in Phoenix around so many veteran players will help him along. Because when you look at it, when he entered last season, he hadn't even played a full season of games yet. It was over the course of last season, which was, he played 70 games for the Magic, that he even eclipsed the 82 total games played mark. So he's still a very young player. And I think as he goes and he's around veterans, it'll definitely help his development.
Do you think because of the way the Suns are constructed, that's going to be a big aid to him? Because
Absolutely.
One of the examples I just used a second ago was it's easy to take the ball up the court when you have a whole bunch of other like first and second year players around you, like in Orlando, as opposed to 3 all-stars that are going to be like, bro, you don't need to be doing all that. Give us the ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think definitely playing within the framework of a system where you have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, you're going to defer a little bit more. And I think for Bol Bol, last season was tremendous in terms of his development. I don't think, if it were this year, if Bol Bol was last year at this time, he would be considered to be an added player to a team aspiring for a championship. But through the work he put in, what he was able to show over the first part of the season, where he was, in the most improved player consideration list, he's put himself in a position to be added to that type of team. And I think the areas in which he needs to improve upon will help being around the veteran players that the Suns have.
We talked with some of our friends up in Denver about Bol Bol, and one of the critiques that they said was that he may not love basketball, that there's been some questions about that with him. Did you see that at all in Orlando?
No, I didn't get that sense at all. I think, he definitely made bigger strides in Orlando. You look at what happened in Denver, he wasn't playing that much. He wasn't on the court. He wasn't healthy. And I think it's easy to come to those determinations where a guy may be frustrated with whether he's playing or not, whether he's healthy or not, and go into the terms of whether or not he loves basketball. But he was a hard worker throughout his time in Orlando. He made tremendous progress. I think it showed. So I think his time in Orlando was good for both sides. And I think this opportunity now with the Suns gives him an opportunity to grow in a different sense. So I'm excited to see what Bol does in Phoenix. And, I think he'll do, some really good things to help out that team.
To kind of expand on that, I mean, we have so many new faces on this Sun Squad, so we're trying to still figure out what their personalities are like, who they are as guys in the locker room. What can you share with us about Bol Bol, maybe away from the court or just personality-wise?
Well, I think in terms of guys, you get to know their personality. Bol won't be among them. As much as he is a guy that people want to see and get to know better, he's a guy that isn't in love with doing media interviews, doesn't want the spotlight on him, just wants to go about his business. So if you have, a bunch of paparazzi following around Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, he's going to happily defer and give those guys the spotlight.
So he's not going to be our new vibes guy dancing center court. Is that what you're telling us? We can't count on that.
The funny part about him is he's an experience. Our broadcast team called it the Bowler Coaster because there's so many ups and downs, a big ride.
Boom.
Yes.
Boom.
There's a gift that goes around.
Yeah, he was doing it too. See, Lindsay, get on the Bowler Coaster, damn it.
Yeah, so he is a vibe, but in his own way. And I think what draws so many people to him is that the players around him love him, and when he does something amazing, there's few players that'll elicit a bigger bench reaction than Bol Bol. So every time he does something, just look over at the bench. That'll be the vibe.
But why? Why do the players love him so much?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I was kind of alluding to at the beginning. If you've been watching the league long enough and you've seen so many dunks and seen so many, ways guys have operated in a pick and roll, gone up and down the court, for NBA players, a lot of it becomes routine. It's hard to, really surprise them and show them something they haven't seen before. And Bol Bol doing the things he does at his size can elicit that reaction even from the most seasoned NBA pros, because he'll do things, shoot from angles that are awkward, that you're like, there's no way that ball's going in, then it goes in. He'll pull up for a deep three at his size, knock it down, and, he'll do some dunk or block that's just, crazy and it's just a different experience.
So maybe what you're saying is he's our new Chris Paul, because Gerald and I used to laugh about how Chris Paul would do one or two things every game that you would just laugh at because he was just kind of being a dick.
It'll be a much different cerebral experience.
A different vibe.
I mean, Chris was just, as you guys know, so competitive, so, a student of the game that he could pick things apart and do things, differently. And he was such a competitor that, he'd test people in different ways. Whereas Bol is just kind of this guy who just wants to go about his business and be a quiet guy, but yet his on-court play makes it, a whole different experience. So it's an interesting juxtaposition with Bol.
Dan, you alluded to it, and I have to ask because going back through his film from last year, there were so many blocks. He loves that Euro step and carry the ball over the guy's head and dunked on a couple people. Do you have a favorite Bol Bol highlight to put you on the spot for a second?
For me, it was one of the things that happened in an early practice where he just caught the ball, stole it from somebody and came down and elicited this powerful dunk. And it was just like, whoa, just woke up a quiet practice. And it was just those things that he could turn a mundane practice into something really exciting. And just because, like I said, it's just things you haven't seen before. And so I think that and the broadcast team riding the Bowler Coaster, when I saw that GIF, I'm at the game, so I can't see it live, but when that GIF came across my feed, I was nearly in tears.
You're going to have to send that to me because I actually haven't seen it. But I thought I was being original when I came up with Bowler Coaster for the title of my article today. So I'm kind of devastated to learn that it's already happened.
Dan, you are in such good company with Gerald. The amount of puns that have already been made on the show, 7 minutes in before you showed up, astronomical.
It's been a reasonable amount.
Reasonable.
Come on.
I love it. It'll never reach an unbearable level.
Yes.
Are you sure? Are you sure, Dan? Because I'm not sure right now.
I hate to bring down the vibe.
This guy.
But I have to ask. I mean, it sounds like good guy has potential to develop, Orlando's a team that has a lot of young guys and is trying to develop. Why would they move away from him like they did?
It's not a case where they didn't like Bol Bol, but when you have a young team, as you alluded to, with so many young players, there's only so many young players you could develop at one time and be committed to. And when you look at the Magic's case, it's going to be centered around Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., Markel Fultz. Those are a lot of the guys that they're building around, and so with that comes making some tough decisions. They liked R.J. Hampton, but had to move away from him last season. Bol Bol is this case this offseason, but I think it's a case where, Bol's had a great opportunity, did good things for Orlando, and now it'll give him another opportunity and phase to grow with Phoenix, where, you can't be wrong playing next to those guys with defensive decisions. You can't be wrong with how you work in the offense. And if you get an open shot, you need the confidence to step into it and knock it down. And I think for Bol, hearing guys like Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant in his ear, saying, if you have an open shot, knock it down, it'll do wonders for his confidence. Because there were times last season where he had open threes, didn't necessarily take them right off the bat, and he's fully capable of knocking them down. And I think as he continues to get reps and plays with those veteran players, he'll continue to grow in that regard.
So it's not improbable that he becomes a great player?
It's definitely not impossible.
I am curious what in your mind kind of stands out as the areas where he'll need to improve the most with this Suns team, because obviously it's different going from a youth movement to a team that's trying to contend, probably less opportunities to learn from mistakes. The two that stood out to me were the ball handling and then just kind of general positioning on defense. Where do you see him kind of needing to improve the most?
Yeah, I think the thing that's going to determine how much playing time he gets for the Suns off the bat is how well and how quickly he could pick up the schemes on both ends of the floor. Because, like I said, when you look in terms of playing time, he's basically like 1 year into his NBA career. So, grasping those parts are going to be key for him early to getting on the court. And then when he's playing, he racks up a lot of blocks. He'll get a lot of steals. He'll have an impact defensively. But, he's got to be careful with his lateral movement, not making false steps, not overreacting to things. Those are the elements that could get him in trouble at times. And I think as he gets more reps playing alongside veteran players, that'll definitely help him.
We did have a question in our chat from one of our listeners. Their name is Det, and they asked, will Bol be playing the 4 or the 5? Where do you see him better suited as far as the Suns?
You look at a guy of that size and you think, that's a center, but he plays much more like a guard than he does a traditional big man. So I think, in a situation where he's playing alongside like a big, like DeAndre Ayton, who can help, clean up some of the mistakes, that can definitely help Bol along his way. But I don't think of him as a traditional 5. He's more one of these hybrid guys that can play, either on the wing or as a 4, stretch the floor and give you some additional, fun playmaking.
Awesome.
That means the chaos menu's in play, gentlemen. KD, Bol, and DA.
Yes, 7-footers across the board. Here we come.
Give me all the 7-foot wingspans.
We're going to be a very tall team.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so much.
The point guard situation plays out the way that they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is true. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan. We really appreciate your insight and all of the information that you could share with us about Bol Bol today. Thank you.
You're
I look
unbelievable.
forward to all the Bol Bol puns from this group. You got to keep it alive.
We'll keep it alive.
We'll talk to you
Take it
next
easy, guys.
time. Everyone listening, also make sure you give Dan a follow on Twitter. He is at Dan_Savage. Really great guy. And thanks again for him stopping by. We really appreciate that.